simple 2x2 matrix, and we'll describe that here in a minute. But I want to give you a couple of key thoughts as I kind of tell my story, really. And I went to college. I graduated from high school in 2006 here in Schererville, Indiana, and then I went to college in Crown Point, Indiana, for a few years, and really enjoyed it. I've learned a lot of great things, but something happened while I was in college. So I started. Here's an example. Let me show you. So I began to work at UPS out in Chicago, Bedford Park, Illinois. I was a manager there. I ended as a manager, but I was a hourly employee, making $12 an hour or whatever. And my income at that time, I want to show you this. My income at that time, I looked at back in my bank statements and how much money I actually had made. My income back then, in 2000 and let's say 2007, 2008 area, was roughly $26,000, $26,540 some dollars a year, roughly about that. Okay. Now that was roughly my income at that time. So I was struggling, and here's our first thing. You can draw this in your notes if you'd like. We're going to draw a 2x2 matrix right here, and we're going to use what's called the 4 quadrants. It's on the back of your card, the card I gave you as well, and but I've changed a couple of the wording a little bit to maybe make it simple. But I would say after making $26,540 a year as a college student, full-time college student, trying to make my way through life, I was trying to pay my bills and earn my way. My dad taught me, you got to do it on your own if you're going to be a man. And I did, and I was excited about doing it. But I would say I definitely fell into this quadrant right here. I was broke, and I was living paycheck to paycheck. I was not making a ton of money, but I thought in my mind that it was the amount of money I made that determined my success. I thought that back then, and I thought you have to make a lot of money to be successful financially. But I was broke. But that year, let me pull it up to make sure I'm factual with you guys. That year I made. That year I spent, let's see, roughly $132. I spent roughly $132 eating out, roughly average per month, just eating out. Now, how many of you can relate to that? Absolutely, not even ashamed, right? And you know what? $132 is a lot of money when you're making $26,540 a year. Now, do you think that this has any responsibility to the fact that I lived in that quadrant, right? Okay, so we understand that. But then in July of 2008, July of 2008. So in July I was making $26,000. 1 month later, in August, I got my first what would be considered big raise. All right. Now, how many of you know what a big raise means? All right. Those are fun. It's kind of cool when your boss walks you into the office and he says, "Hey, we're going to promote you and we're going to double your salary, almost double your salary." I went from $26,000. 1 month later, I was spending this much, making this much, living here. Okay, but I went to $43,000 a year salary. All right, and man, I was excited. So you know what? The first thing I did, I saved all of it. No, I didn't. Not a bit. But you know what I did do is I went and financed a nice car. I financed myself a nice Chevy Prism. I paid $132 a month for that. But you know what else I did? I started eating out more. Instead of doing the little dollar menu meals, I started eating at the steakhouses. Because you know what? I was making money. I was still a full-time college student. I had no girlfriend at the time, and I'll tell you more about that in a minute. But I had no girlfriend at the time. I was just a single college guy trying to just make my way through life, and so I was making $43,000 a year, which means then at that time I had a choice to make. Now back then I didn't know this choice, but now I understand it, and I don't want you to make this choice. But I had a choice to make. I could either go and live here, or I could go and live here. Okay? I could either go and live, as it says on your card, in status, or I could go and live in what would be considered tightwad, or I'm going to call it financial security. Okay? Financial security. So I had that choice to make. But guess which one I chose? Status. Absolutely, I chose that. I was like, man, I'm not going to spend $20 on a meal. I'm going to spend $50 on a meal. In fact, I'm even going to take my friends out with me, and I'm going to take all them to nice meals, and I'm going to enjoy this 43, I mean, I'm rich now. I'm making 43 grand a year, right? But I wasn't. But I was living right here, and I'm going to call this the bottle rocket. The bottle rocket quadrant. You see, what does a bottle rocket do? Who knows what it does? On July 4th, when we do bottle rockets, what does it do? Shoots up and comes straight down, right? That's what it does. And that is exactly what I did in my life at that time when I was in my thinking about finances. I realized, man, I have $43,000. So let me tell you the average amount of money I spent. This is going to shock you. The average amount of money that I spent eating out at that time was $422 a month eating out. That's nearly triple what I was spending when I was making 26 grand a year broke. But I lived in that status quadrant. And then I thought, man, I'm still living paycheck to paycheck, right? But what changed? So now, in 2014, now fast forward to 2014, I'm married now. I got married in November of 2014. 1 month later, my friend gave me a call, and he introduced me to this green box right here, okay? He introduced me to this green box right here. And when I opened, and what I did is I did what status people do. I did what bottle rocket people do. I put it on my shelf and didn't touch it. It was shelf help. It helped me a lot by sitting on my shelf. I didn't even open it. But then in February, here's the bottle rocket. In February, just 2 months later, I got fired from my job with nothing in the bank. I looked at my bank statements. I had $68 in my savings account and $121 in my checking account. I'm sorry, 120 in my savings and 68 in my checking. I was fired. I had no job. There's the bottle rocket. It went up and straight back down, right? But here's what changed. I had a family now. I had a daughter. I had to raise. I had a wife now. I had a mortgage. I had a car payment that I got into. I had all these things, and I had to find a way to get back up again, right? But what changed when I finally, in July of 2015, when I finally opened up this green box and started going through it, and I'm going to go through a couple of principles out of the green box today, and I hope that you'll take them and apply them. But the only thing that changed was my information. My information. I had to get better information. The information that I was getting was leading me and keeping me right here in my thinking. It was not about how much money I made, and I'll cover that in a second. But today I'm going to give you 3 simple principles out of the green box, straight out of the green box, that you can apply today in your finances and in your life to start setting yourself up on a journey to actually understanding some principles, understanding financial security, okay? Because I would much rather live right here, at least as a minimum, I can be secure, all right? At least as a minimum. And now, just after applying these principles, I don't make much more money than I was making back then. But just after applying these principles in my life, now, for the first time, I actually have $1,000 in a savings account. Can you believe that? I've never seen that kind of money in a savings account before. But now, just because I changed my information, that's all I did, and I applied these principles, it worked. And it really did. And it's crazy how it worked. I'm not a super wealthy guy standing up here in front of you, but I do know that this journey is marked with actual success that really does work. And it's not about, number one, here's a principle I want you to write down. I'm going to read it. I have it memorized, but it's a little bit lengthy, but I want you to write down this principle. Principle number 1. In the green box, when you open up your green box, principle number 1 is simply this. It is not what you make, but what you keep that determines financial success. Pay yourself first and save what you pay yourself. It is not what you make, but what you keep that determines financial success. Pay yourself first and save what you pay yourself.
And by the way, guys, I have my green box.
Yeah, Miss Miller has one too.
Here that you can look at, after class and whenever.
Excellent, yeah. And so the key principle there is, number 1, it's not what you make that determines your financial success. My story can validate that. It was not how much money I made that determined my success in finances. It was what I kept that determined. This year is the first year. We're near the end of the year. I spent 12 months now. 12 solid months applying these principles, okay? This year is the first year looking at my savings account I have exactly 10% of my income that I made this year in savings. Exactly 10%. It's crazy. So write that number down. 10%. Write that down. 10%. Make it a number that you remember every time money comes in your bank account. Every time something is put in your bank account from anywhere, any source, immediately take 10% of it and drop it in a savings account. Just transfer it right away. I go to my mobile app and I transfer it right away to my savings account immediately. And it's not about it's about the discipline of consistently doing it that works. It started out with $0 in January in my savings account. But this year alone, exactly 10% of my income is in savings. And it's crazy how that works out. But it started out, remember, I was only making a couple $100 a week. So it started out as only $70, you know. And I was like, man, how's this going to make me rich? How's it going to make me successful financially? But it's not about the one time you do it. It's about the consistency of applying these principles, because it's not how much money you make, but how much you keep that determines your financial success. Let me encourage you, pay yourself first, all right? Always pay yourself first, the first 10%. Then take your second 10% and give it to a cause that's greater than yourself. Tithe, you've got to do that. It's important. It's a principle of financial success. We have to do this. We have to make sure we always take 10%, pay ourselves, and 10% give it to a cause greater than yourself. Make sure you constantly remember that. 10% pay yourself first, and then save what you pay yourself. All right? It's important. Make it money that you are never going to spend, never going to cut out of your saving. Even it doesn't matter how bad you have to have that new pair of boots. Who likes boots? Oh, I can tell. You must be late. I know. Boots. My wife is getting into those things now. It's crazy. But even if you have to have that pair of boots, don't touch your savings account. Even if it's an emergency, don't touch that savings account until at least you have $1,000 in savings. Don't touch it, because if you start touching it, your thinking has gone back. All right? Remember, it's all about how you think about money that really actually determines that journey that you're going to be on. All right? So principle number 1, we read it there. It's not, give me 2 seconds here. It's not about how much you make. It's about how much you keep. Pay yourself first and save what you pay yourself. Principle number 2. So this is actually the fun one. I like this one a lot. This is one of my favorite ones, all right? Principle number 1. Anybody want to say it?
It's not what you make, but what you keep that determines financial success. Pay yourself first and save what you pay.
Absolutely. And you know what? That starts you on this journey. It starts you on that journey to financial security, all right? We are so tired. Aren't every one of us sick and tired of not being financially secure? I mean, aren't we tired of that? And so can you imagine just simply paying yourself first and allowing that to set you up on that journey? At least get your mindset in the right direction, all right? So then number 2, this is principle number 4 in the green box, but we're going to call it number 2. This is a good one. This is a fun one. So I'm going to tell you a quick story. When I was in college, I had roommates. I've been in have you ever been in dormitories before? Nobody? All right. So dormitories are kind of crazy. They're, you meet people from all over the country. And I was in college. I had a dormitory roommate my first year. Really nice guy, good guy. But he was the first guy that ever came to me and gave me dating advice, all right? And so I was a single college student. He was a single college student. And you know what? He came to me, and he used to call it macking. I mean, I've never heard that word before. You guys know what macking means? So macking, whatever that means, it's macking. So, but Michael would teach me how to mac. And I remember that? Yeah. So it's been several years now since college, all right? Mike, our entire college career, never had a girlfriend. Never once. But he knew how to teach it, right? He knew the wisdom on it. And still, to this day, I met Mike about maybe a year and a half ago. I met Mike at a little pizza restaurant here in Chicago where he lives. And he is still single to this day. Isn't that amazing? But you know what? Here's principle number 4. Principle number 4. Stop getting financial advice from broke people. All right? Stop getting financial advice from broke people. Get it only from those whose finances you want to emulate. Okay? Get it only from people whose finances you want to emulate. Now here's the tricky thing, all right? Because remember, we're talking about status here, right? Status people might look very successful financially. They might look that way, all right? So you've got to have discernment. The Bible uses the word discernment or wisdom. We've got to have that. And so we can use this. We see people, oh, he has a nice car. He's somebody I want to talk to. Be careful. He might be, but be careful, all right? He has a big house. He might be someone I want to talk to. Be careful. Make sure you remember. Because being broke is not about the amount of money you make. It's about what you keep that determines financial success. See, right now, you are getting today more wisdom with finances just in that simple principle of paying yourself first. You're understanding, how do I pick the person I'm going to get advice from? You see, you can spend your whole life taking financial advice from broke people, kind of like I did from Mike on dating. And you know what, my whole college career, I had one girlfriend my whole college career. You know, and I didn't marry her. And now I'm married, though, because you know what? I stopped taking advice from Mike on dating, right? So the idea of stopping taking financial advice from broke people is the same principle that we need to apply in our finances. Stop it. Just stop it. You know, and sometimes it is a family member. You know, sometimes it is. Sometimes it's a spouse. Sometimes it's a child. Sometimes it's a friend. Usually it's a friend. Usually it is. Usually your friends know more about your money than you do. And they're always happy to tell you about it. But see, those are the people. But remember, let me teach you to validate their success. Validate it if they actually have fruit on the tree in their life. Okay? I don't mean ask them to open up their bank account, but I'm saying use discernment and understand these principles of just because he says I sat with a lawyer, a law student in Keller Law School here in Chicago. She said in her class she was taught. The teacher taught her. Okay, this is crazy. I'm so glad you have a teacher like Miss Miller who's going to teach the complete opposite, all right? But her teacher taught her this. She said, my teacher taught me, when you make a lot of money, you need to go and finance a really nice car so you can impress your clients. Is that good financial advice? No. But this is what law students are being taught. Now, they can make up to $300,000 a year. That's a pretty good salary. But does that mean they have financial success? I've sat in rooms with people that make $1 million a year, and they've never one time asked me what brand my shirt is. Never one time. Never once. They don't even ask what kind of car I drive. Right? Because, see, it's in your mindset. It's the people that, be careful about taking your financial advice from broke people. Make sure you validate the success. And we have a talk we're going to do, hopefully next time we get together, on the idea of picking a good mentor in your life. That's very important in understanding those principles. All right? So be careful with those principles. So principle number 9, this is the last one. Principle number 9, but we're going to make it number 3. And this is a key principle. Remember, it's not about how much, it's how you think about money first, okay? That determines our success financially. It really is how our mindset is, all right? So here's a principle that will help us establish the right mindset in our finances, all right? Financially fit people, here it is, financially fit people are avid readers. I know it's a dirty word. Are avid readers and consistently, that's a key word, underline that, consistently, invest in themselves by increasing their financial and leadership education. Let me go back. Financially fit people are avid readers and consistently invest in themselves. Consistently invest in themselves by increasing their financial and leadership education, skills, experience, knowledge, and ability. Financially fit people are avid readers and consistently, key word, invest in themselves by increasing their financial and leadership education, skills, experience, knowledge, and ability. Consistently invest in themselves. That key word is consistently. Everybody got it? Okay, so I want to kind of maybe bring it down a little bit into a little bit more of the real life. What really works, what really has worked for a lot of people and really has worked for me, is it didn't begin when I just opened up a book and read it, all right? How many of you like to read? Let me ask you that. How many like to read? All right, you like to read? Not everybody. It's typical. It's not everybody tends to want to sit down and read a book. All right, but it wasn't when I just opened up and read a book. It was when I began consistently reading a book. All right, it was when I began consistently 10 to 15 minutes a day, simply reading a book, reading something. All right, Miss Miller's going to give you a list of the 5 books that I recommend everybody ought to be reading. All right, everybody ought to read these. They teach people skills. They teach the ideas of communicating, and they teach principles they can apply to relationships. And again, it's about the principles. It's about the mindset, and it's about the consistency. One of the areas I've struggled with in my life so much is this area of consistently doing things. Consistency, and it's a struggle. It's not easy because you know what? Netflix is really cool. And it's really attractive, and it's really appealing sometimes, and YouTube is really fun to just sit. It's amazing. The Google marketers, you know how they suck you into YouTube? You spend an hour on YouTube and realize I just spent a whole hour sitting on YouTube? Because they suck you in. They put these different videos up there that draw you in, and they're very good at it. And so what we have to do is we have to pursue what's called freedom. All right, that's a key word. Would you write that word down in the last matrix box? All right, we're going to call it financial freedom. All right, since we're talking about money. How many of you are tired of being tied down by debt? Oh my soul, it's nuts. And you pay and you pay and you pay, and you know what? How many of you go to work to pay bills? Yeah. Isn't that why we go to work nowadays? But let me. I have to be careful. But let me teach you something. Did you know that there's a system designed to entice people into debt? How many of you ever go to a grocery store? You go to Kohl's. My wife likes to go to Kohl's sometimes. My sister works there, and it's crazy. I went in there the other day. It said everywhere, all over the racks, it said 25% off when you sign up for a credit card, right? And you could save all that money on your purchase if you get a credit card. We're enticed into debt. We're sold on it. It's easy to buy. And so what we have to do is we have to learn principles of freedom. I'm going to tell you a story about Frederick Douglass. How many of you ever heard of him before? He was back when American slavery was at its worst in our country. Frederick Douglass was a man that stood up and said, "I'm going to pursue freedom." All right? He wrote a biography. Now, one, that's unusual. Back then, it was unusual for a slave to write or read. It was very unusual. But let me teach you this. He called him Master Nate. Master Nate was the person that he claimed owned him. And he said, he went to him and he said, "Master Nate, can I learn how to read?" Right? Now think of what it means here. "Master Nate, can I learn how to read?" His master said, "No. Because if you do, you'll learn that freedom exists." He said, "I will teach you how to read, but you're not going to like it. You're going to wish you hadn't learned how to read." And Frederick Douglass, I'll read it out of this book, he wrote in his autobiography, he said he was right. "When I started reading and I started learning how to read, the thoughts of freedom began to circulate in my head, and I realized I had to get out of slavery." It was the next step he couldn't help but do. He had to pursue freedom simply because he learned how to read. And he said, "You know what? I had to help my fellow countrymen and my brothers. I had to help them get out of this because I knew it existed." And it wasn't because he read books on how to be free. It was because he read books. He read. He learned how to read. Frederick Douglass. And he did some amazing things. And really was a key player in the responsibility for ending that nonsense in our country. And what a great man he did. But it wasn't because he just woke up one day and said, "Hey, I'm going to fight for freedom." It was when he learned how to read, he said that the thoughts of freedom began to circle in my head, and I couldn't help but do something about it. Man, we can be free financially too. We can be. But it doesn't happen simply because we just wake up every day and pay our bills. It happens when we simply wake up and consistently invest in ourselves and read something every day on a consistent basis. Read a good book. This is a great book that teaches you how to read. It's wild. You need to read books that teach us how to read like a leader, how to read like somebody that's pursuing freedom in your life. And so let me encourage you all, Pick a book. Find a book that you can read. There's 5 of them on your list there. Pick a book and invest in yourself and read and understand those principles, because you know what? This freedom right here is possible. Trust me. I've seen it. I've read enough books in the past 2 years where, man, I can't help but read some more because it's real and it actually, can you imagine being financially free? Can you imagine that? What would it look like for you? What color car would you drive if you were financially free? Pink car, a pink car. Who else? What color car would you drive?
Red.
A red car. Wouldn't that be cool? Can you imagine that? Can you imagine how big of a house would you have if you were financially free? What would it look like? Not big? Good, good. Where would you travel? Where would you travel if you were financially free? Africa?
Yeah.
Beautiful country, beautiful country.
Really?
I can't wait to go to Africa. I am so excited about it. All right, we have a missionary team down in Ghana that I can't wait. In May of 2020, here's what I did. Man, I'm excited. I'm glad you all are here. Because you know what? You get to see a part of my dream. Watch this. In May of 2020, just a couple years down the road, right? When financial freedom is possible for me, and it really happens, I get to go and write 5 checks for $5,000 to 5 missionaries around our country, around our world. And one of them is Africa. I can't wait to go. Another one is in Thailand. Another one's in the Philippines. I can't wait to go. And you know what? I have visualized it. I have pictured it. I can feel it. The freedom is real, and I can't wait. Can you imagine being a missionary on the field when someone comes up to you and says, "Hey, you know what? I need a new church building," and man, I get to sit there and write them a check and hand it to them. Here's $5,000 to go reach your country. Isn't that cool? Because you know what? God called me to be a missionary. I can't wait to go. But you know what? If I'm stuck in slavery, in financial slavery, I can't go yet. But I'm stuck. Isn't that crazy? I have to get out of that. And so I've got to get out of this mindset and get up to here as a minimum and start pursuing financial security. And then I'm pursuing financial freedom. All right? And remember, it's all in your mindset. Try and imagine yourself. Imagine what it's going to be like 5 years down the road or 10 years down the road when you have applied those principles consistent. Look, I'm only 2 years in. Think of how it's going to be next year. Think of how it's going to be when I've saved 10% of my income and now I've got twice as much money in savings. Imagine that for yourself. That's the key principle of imagination. Imagine action is what I call it. But let's try and keep that. Does anybody have any questions?